I went back to Blackwood last week. I'm 32 now, and I thought it would be fun to visit my childhood town. I planned to write about the street festival celebrating local folklore. I wanted to relive some memories. I really expected it to be just how I remembered it. On my first night, I noticed flickering lights coming from the old church at the edge of town. I figured it was just kids messing around. I thought about getting some pictures for my blog. As I got closer, my heart started racing. The church seemed worse than I remembered. The wood was peeling and the windows were cracked. I told myself I was fine. But when I reached the door, I felt uneasy. Something wasn't right. Then I saw it, a message scratched into the wood. "They're watching." My stomach dropped. The excitement I had faded. I felt cold. The festival started the next day. The town felt alive again. People laughed and chatted, but something was off. I overheard locals whisper about a tragic accident years ago. Whenever I approached, they fell silent. I walked into an antique shop and found a box of old photographs. The people in them stared blankly at the camera. Their eyes were so cold, it made me shiver. I kept talking to locals, but their replies felt strange. One woman said, "We watch over the town," but her smile didn't match her words. I felt a chill again. It was as if the town was closing in on me. I kept looking back at the church from different spots at the festival. I didn't understand why I kept being drawn to it. I needed to know. The night before the festival's big event, I found myself outside the church again. The flickering lights were brighter this time. I took a deep breath and stepped closer. My hands shook as I reached for the handle. I hesitated. I didn't want to go in. Everything felt heavy. Suddenly, I heard laughter. It was distant and echoed around me. I turned my head, expecting someone to be there, but no one was. My heart raced as I stood still. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't budge. It was like the air around me became thick. Then I remembered the scheduled events for the festival. A small market was set up near the park. Maybe talking to more people might help. Maybe I'd find someone who would explain the weird atmosphere. So I forced myself to walk away from the church, but I didn't feel quite right. The next morning, the sun shone bright. The festival was in full swing, and people roamed about with laughter and food, but I felt like an outsider. Every time I tried to engage in conversation, I was met with sidelong glances or murmurs. I could almost hear them saying, "There she is, the one from—" At one point, I stumbled across a small booth selling handmade crafts. The woman behind the counter had a warm smile, but her eyes were not friendly. "Looking for something special?" she asked, her voice cheerful but strained. I nodded, forcing a smile back. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed an old wooden box at the edge of her stall. "What's this?" I asked, pointing it out. She hesitated before answering. "Nothing of interest," she replied, brushing it aside. That made me even more curious. I thought about the church. What was going on there? "Do you remember the old church?" I asked. Immediately her expression changed. The warmth drained from her face. "Best not to dwell on it," she said curtly. "Some things are best left alone." Feeling frustrated, I thanked her and left. As I wandered through the festival, I decided to head toward the park where a lot of the activities were happening. I needed to change my perspective, to drown out the whispers and laughter. But as I walked, I spotted a group of children playing near a fountain. One boy turned to me and grinned wide, but his smile fell fast. "You shouldn't go to the church," he said, his voice quiet. I knelt down to his level, surprised by the sudden chill that wrapped around me. "Why not?" I asked softly. "They don't want you there," he replied, looking back at his friends. They were all staring at me now, their eyes wide and unblinking. "They watch." I felt my skin prickling. Time seemed to freeze as the laughter around me faded. Remembering the message on the church door, fear gripped me again. I managed to stand and step back. "What do you mean by they?" Just then, I saw a figure behind the tree line, partially obscured but unmistakable. It was watching me. The boy seemed to sense my fear. "You better go," he said, his eyes darting. I needed to leave. As I turned to run, panic surged in my chest. I had to discover the truth. I couldn't ignore this any longer. But when I looked back, the figure was gone. I took one last gulp of air, and a sense of urgency shot through me. That's when I saw it. Tiny footsteps leading away from the crowd and straight to the church. The tiny footsteps were unmistakable. They left a trail in the grass, urging me to follow. My heart raced, but curiosity tugged at me stronger than fear. I stepped over the festival booths, weaving through the crowd. Every laugh and cheer felt like a distant echo, swallowed by the pounding in my chest. As I approached the church, the weight of its presence grew. The tall, dark structure loomed ahead, and the whispering wind kicked up, carrying a chill that made me shiver. I couldn't just turn back now. The boy's warning rolled around in my mind, but it felt too late for hesitation. The footsteps were clearer now, leading directly to the unattended side door of the church. Hesitating for just a moment, I reached for the handle. It creaked open, revealing a dim interior. Dust particles danced in the sunlight, streaming through the stained glass windows. The air was still and heavy, like it had been holding secrets for too long. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting to the gloom. The musty wood of old wood mixed with something far less pleasant. It was a smell I couldn't quite put my finger on, but it made my stomach churn. I took a deep breath and moved further in, pushing past rows of empty pews. Suddenly, I heard a noise. A soft shuffling sound echoed behind the altar. My pulse quickened. I looked around, feeling exposed. Every creak in the floorboards felt louder than it should. "Hello?" I called out, my voice low and wavering. No response. Just silence. Cautiously, I made my way toward the altar. That's when I noticed a small, worn tapestry hanging on the wall. It depicted a gathering of people, but their faces were obscured by shadow. I stepped closer, and the air grew colder. That's when I saw it, a strange symbol carved into the wooden altar. It was circular, with lines radiating outward, like something ancient and foreboding. It felt wrong. I raised my hand, touching the symbol gently, and a shock of energy shot through me, sending me stumbling back. A chilling wind swept through the church, extinguishing the rays of sunlight that had warmed the space moments before. Panic set in as shadows seemed to stretch and shift, looming at the edges of my vision. "Get out," a voice whispered, sharp and urgent. It wasn't the comforting kind of whisper. It was demanding and afraid. I turned to leave, my heart racing. As I did, I thought I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, a fleeting shadow darting past me. My breath hitched. I dashed for the door, and that's when I heard a child's laughter mixed with something else, something darker. Before I could think, I burst through the door and stumbled back into the bright afternoon. But the festival halls outside were still full of laughter and cheer, oblivious to what lay just behind me. I looked back at the church one last time, and for a brief moment, I swear I could see a figure standing in the doorway. Just then, I realized I wasn't alone. A crowd of townsfolk had gathered nearby, watching me with those same sidelong glances. Whispers floated through the air, and I could feel their stares, the silent judgment weighing heavily on me. Now more than ever, I needed answers. Who were they watching, and why did it feel so menacing? I took a step forward, but the whispers grew louder, gripped by an unspoken warning. This festival was not just a celebration, it was a mask. I had to find out more. The church held the answers, and I couldn't back down now. The next day, I walked back to the church. I needed to understand what had happened. The sun hung high in the sky, but the memories from yesterday clung to me like a shadow. I had spent the night tossing and turning, haunted by the laughter that twisted into something sinister. As I approached the church's side door, I noticed something new. A small group of people stood outside, murmuring quietly. They were older, their faces lined with worry. I took a breath and straightened my back, ready to press on. I had almost stepped past them when I heard a voice. "Are you going back in there?" an elderly woman asked, her eyes wide. Her voice trembled slightly. I hesitated. I want to know what's going on." A man beside her shook his head. "No good comes from that place. You shouldn't go in there." Confusion took root in my mind. Why? What happened? Their expressions shifted. They shared looks filled with unspoken fear, as if I had struck a nerve. Finally, the woman leaned closer, lowering her voice. "It's not just stories. There are things that shouldn't be disturbed." "Things?" My stomach churned at the word. "Like what?" The man stepped forward, his expression grave. "Years ago, a child went missing. They searched everywhere. They thought it was an accident, but—" He trailed off, as though he feared the words would summon something back. "What?" I pressed, my urgency growing. "They found the child's belongings in the church. After that, the town changed. People started whispering about strange happenings." I remembered the laughter, the shadows. "You mean it's still there?" The woman looked over her shoulder, as if checking for unseen eyes. "There's a darkness in that church. Many avoid it, but some say the boy still lingers." As the urgency swelled in my chest, I realized my quest for answers was only just beginning. I needed to go inside, but fear held me back. "What if the boy's spirit is trapped?" I murmured. "What if I could help him?" "No one can help what can't be helped," the man replied, his voice heavy with resignation. "And if you go looking, you might find something worse than what you're hoping for." Determined, I turned and walked away from them. Their warning echoed in my mind, mixing with the laughter I couldn't shake. I needed to confront the shadows. I also needed to find a way to help the boy, if he truly was trapped. As I stepped back to the door, a chilling breeze swept past me, rustling the leaves in the trees nearby. It felt like a warning. And then a flicker of movement caught my eye beyond the door. It was quick, darting back into the darkness within. Before I could think it through, I pushed open the door once more, stepping into the cold gloom. The air felt charged, heavier than before. My heart raced, but now it was a mix of fear and determination. I wouldn't leave until I uncovered the truth. That was when the laughter echoed again, louder this time, and it was no longer a child's. It was layered with something that sounded like desperation, mixed with joy.
My skin prickled with dread. I was surely not alone in this place, and I had no idea what was waiting for me in the church's depths. As I stepped further inside, the heavy door creaked ominously behind me. The world outside faded, leaving only the dim light that spilled from the stained glass. The air tasted stale, filled with a musty scent that clung to my throat. I could sense a presence lingering, like a weight in the silence. I looked around, trying to gather my bearings. The pews were worn, their wood splintering in places. Dust danced in the slivers of light, but it was the shadows that drew my eye. They swayed and writhed, almost alive. Heart pounding, I took a hesitant step forward, straining to listen. The laughter answered me again. This time it was different. It felt sharp, edged with something darker, a warning in its tone. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But another flicker of movement caught my eye. A small figure, barely visible, darted around the corner of the altar. "Hello?" My voice trembled as I called out, barely breaking the silence. The laughter stopped, replaced by a profound stillness. I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me. Then a soft sound reached me, a child's voice, hardly a whisper. "Help me!" The plea sent a jolt through my veins. It was soft but insistent, filled with urgency that resonated deep within me. "Where are you?" I asked, desperate to find the source. The shadows shifted again, and I moved closer to the altar. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I refused to let fear conquer my resolve. The child's voice called out again, more demanding this time. "Help me!" I squinted into the darkness, peering past the flickering candle set at the altar. That's when I saw it, a small doll, pristine compared to the rest of the decay around, lying on the ground in an empty corner. It was unsettlingly out of place, its glass eyes shining with a fixed expression. As I reached for the doll, memories flooded my mind, images of laughter, pigtails, and sparkling eyes. I dropped to my knees. "Is this yours?" I asked, my voice nearly breaking. But as soon as my fingers brushed the fabric, a jolt of cold shot through me. It was as though I had opened a door I wasn't ready to face. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, breathing became laborious, and the shadows thickened. I glanced back toward the entrance, feeling the weight of a new presence closing in. The air shifted, the laughter returning, but now twisted into a chilling cacophony of voices, soaring and crashing against the stone walls. I scrambled back, heart racing, my head spinning with confusion and fear. What had I just unleashed? The voices continued to rise, oscillating between cries for help and twisted cackles that echoed through the church. I had come seeking answers, but now I saw too many doors opening before me. I needed to find a way out, but the shadows danced closer, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear.
Then a cold voice, sharper than steel, pierced through the cacophony. "You shouldn't have come here." Every muscle in my body froze. Something was watching me from the dark, and I knew it wasn't just the boy's spirit. Desperation clawed at me. I had a choice to make. I hesitated, caught between the dread of the unseen threat and the pull of the child's desperate plea. The laughter had turned into something ominous, curling around me like a dark fog. I glanced back at the entrance one last time, the door still ajar, but the outside world felt impossibly distant now. "Please help me," the child's voice echoed again, layered with urgency, as if drawing me deeper into the shadows. I felt my stomach churn. I'd never believed in ghosts or spirits, but fear tugged at my instincts, urging me to move, to flee, yet I found myself rooted in place. "Who are you?" I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. The shadows flickered again, and I caught sight of movement behind the altar, a fleeting glimpse of white fabric. Before I could process it, a small figure appeared, peering at me. It was a girl, her hair unkempt and skin pale, with wide, frightened eyes. "They won't let me go," she whispered, and the shadows swirled more aggressively around her. "You have to help me." "Help you how?" I asked, my voice a mix of determination and fear. I inched closer. "What do you need?" "Get the doll!" she cried, pointing a trembling finger at the toy I had found lying on the ground. "It's dangerous!" Before I could react, the air around me thickened, as if something massive was descending. I breathed harder, a sense of impending doom crawling up my spine. The shadows twisted into a darker mass, coiling tightly around the girl and engulfing her, making her scream, "No!" I stumbled backward, instinctively looking for a way out. Every nerve in my body screamed to escape, to run from whatever this place had morphed into, but the girl's frightened plea echoed inside my head. I darted back toward the altar, my heart heavy with indecision.
I had to choose. I could leave, abandon the girl and the doll, or I could confront whatever darkness I had awakened. As I reached for the doll again, the laughter transformed into a cacophony of something primal and terrifying. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in on me. "You have to be quick," the girl shouted from the shadows, her voice strained and distorted. With a surge of resolve, I grabbed the doll. Coldness shot through my fingers, and the moment I lifted it off the ground, everything went dark. The laughter stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence that pressed against my ears. Then a new sensation crept over me. It was as if the shadows were retreating, whispering in frustration. I had done something, but what? In that silence, a new voice emerged, low and hissing. "You've taken what is mine." I spun around, only to find myself face to face with the very thing I had feared.
A figure loomed in the shadows, its features obscured, but its presence dominating. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Release her!" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. The shadow grinned, the light flickering around it in mockery. "This is just the beginning." With those words, I realized I had crossed the line I couldn't unstep. The atmosphere twisted, and a chilling wind swept through the church. I could feel the malevolence rising, and I knew with certainty that whatever nightmares lay ahead were only beginning. I wasn't sure what to do next. The air crackled with tension, and the shadows seemed to pulse with energy. I held the doll tightly, its cold, unyielding body a reminder of the girl's desperate warning. I scanned the darkened corners of the church, looking for some way to break this spell. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted into the darkness, hoping to rattle whatever had emerged. "What do you want?" The shadow figure let out a low chuckle, menacing and deep. "You're not the first to disturb this place. You think you're special." Something in its voice made my blood run cold. I tightened my grip on the doll, suddenly afraid it was more than just a toy. Was it the source of some evil? Was I now part of a game I didn't understand? As I turned to face the altar, I was struck with a terrible clarity. The girl needed me, but I had no idea how to help her. Just as I prepared to call out again, a sudden crash echoed through the church, and debris rained down from above. Instinctively, I ducked as pieces of plaster fell around me. The laughter returned, a shrill sound that bounced off the stone walls. It wasn't just laughter, it was mocking. I felt small, insignificant. Suddenly, I realized I wasn't alone. The girl stood there again, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror. "They're coming!" she screamed. "Who?" I stammered, desperately searching for answers. The very shadows around me were writhing, swirling like a dark storm. "What do I need to do?" "Before it's too late!" she cried, pointing to a small door behind the altar that I hadn't noticed before. It seemed to pulse with an unnatural glow amidst the creeping darkness. I took a step toward it, hesitating as dread filled my chest. Would opening that door bring salvation or doom? "What's in there?" "The truth," she whispered urgently, "but you must hurry." The shadow figure recoiled, as if the mere mention of the door hurt it. "Foolish girl, you'll regret this," it roared, lunging forward. I felt the temperature drop, a chill that made my teeth chatter. Driven by instinct, I bolted toward the door, the doll clutched tightly under my arm. The girl's frightened expression froze in my mind as I pushed the creaky door open. It swung wide, revealing a darkened passage that seemed to stretch infinitely into nothingness. I hesitated at the threshold, glancing back at the figure just as it lunged. I couldn't go back, not now. With a deep breath, I stepped through the door.
As I crossed the threshold, the shadows screamed, a cacophony of rage and despair.
The door slammed shut behind me, sealing me in with whatever awaited ahead. Then everything went dark once more, plunging me into a silence that was worse than the chaos outside. I fumbled in the pitch black, my heart racing. I had a feeling this was only the start of something far worse. And that dreadful laugh echoed faintly, lingering in my mind like a warning. I stumbled forward into the darkness, feeling my way along the walls. The air was damp and stale, each breath thick with dread. The chilling silence made my skin crawl. I tried to focus, desperately needing to make sense of where I was. As my eyes adjusted, I started to see faint outlines. A flicker of movement drew my attention. I turned toward a shadow, my heart pounding wildly. "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer, just more silence. I wished I could see, wished for even a sliver of light. I was reminded again of the girl's warning. Maybe I wasn't safe here. Taking slow, cautious steps, I moved deeper into the passage. The ground beneath me felt uneven, the floor crumbling slightly as I walked. It was like the walls were closing in, constricting my breath. I could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes watching me, an uncomfortable sensation that sent chills racing down my spine. Then I heard it, the faint sound of whispering. It seemed to come from all directions, swirling around me. "Leave while you can. It's not safe," the voices urged. A wave of panic surged through me. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. "Show yourself!" But the whispers faded, replaced by an unnatural stillness. I pressed on, driven by an urge to uncover the truth behind this place and the girl. Suddenly, the ground shifted again, and I stumbled, throwing my hands out to catch myself on the damp wall. My palms met something smooth, a different surface from the rough stone. I froze for a moment, then reached out again. It was a door, locked tight. The wood felt cool and strangely familiar. My fingers traced the carvings etched on the surface, twisted shapes that seemed to writhe under my touch. I took a deep breath as I pushed and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers returned, intensifying into frantic murmurs. I felt dizzy, overwhelmed. Just as I pulled back, preparing to look for another path, a sudden light flickered from beneath the door. My heart raced again. "That's when I saw it," I breathed, leaning closer. A small crack in the bottom of the door glowed with a pulsating light. I crouched low, peering through the opening. On the other side, I saw shadows moving like a chaotic dance. They swirled around what looked like a pedestal. Atop it rested a small, ornate box. My breath hitched. I could almost hear it calling to me, a siren song that stirred something deep within me. But then I heard a loud, thundering crash echo down the passage. The air around me pulsed with energy, and I jumped back as the whispers escalated into shrieks. "Run! It's too late!" they cried. Panic surged, and I turned, ready to flee. I had to get out, had to find an escape from whatever darkness awaited me. Just as I took a step, I froze. Shadows began to twist into shapes, solidifying into menacing forms. Time froze as I realized I wasn't alone anymore, and I had no idea how I was going to face what was waiting for me. I stood there, frozen in place, as the shadows morphed into vague, threatening silhouettes. Their shapes shifted and twisted, too fluid to be real. I could hardly breathe, dread creeping over me like a thick fog. My instinct screamed at me to back away, but the fear of what lay behind me was just as strong. I glanced at the door again, the crack still glowing faintly, almost mockingly, and suddenly I was torn. Should I try to escape through the door or confront the growing shadows? One of them lunged forward, its form flickering like a flame. My heart raced as I stepped back, but there was nowhere to go. "Please, just leave me alone," I shouted, my voice now a mere whisper.
The shadows paused, almost as if they were considering my plea. Then one of the figures separated from the group and drifted closer. I squinted, desperately searching for any shred of recognition. It was then I noticed what looked like a face, partially obscured by darkness. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was someone or something trapped in these shadows. "Help me," it rasped. The voice was hollow, echoing off the walls like a taunt. Confusion washed over me. This had to be part of the trap. I couldn't trust it. Anger surged through me. "If you can talk, then what are you?" I demanded, feeling both brave and foolish for confronting whatever this was. "It was like you, lost," it replied, the form flickering even more violently. "You have to leave. They don't want you here." The shadows around it seemed to pulsate, almost angry at the revelation. Before I could respond, a shriek shattered the silence. The shadows rushed forward, converging into a mass that clung eagerly to the flickering figure. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, as I caught sight of something glinting in the chaos, a shiny object that had fallen from the figure's grasp. My instincts kicked in. I darted towards it, feeling a sudden surge of desperation. I couldn't let whatever was happening take me too. I reached down, snatching the object up just as the surrounding shadows lunged my way. I felt a jolt of energy course through my fingers as I held on to the polished stone. It felt warm against my skin, and in that moment, clarity struck me. This was my way out. The whispers escalated, a cacophony urging me on. The shadows seemed to recoil briefly, and in that brief moment of hesitation, I bolted towards the door. I pressed my shoulder against the wood, adrenaline flooding every nerve.
As I pushed, I felt resistance, but then a crack began to open. I could see light filtering through the gap, sweet and inviting. Suddenly, the weight of the shadows bore down on me, surrounding me with their chilling grasp. "You can't leave," they howled in despair. I took a deep breath and shouldered the door harder. The glowing stone in my hand flared with warmth, and after one final shove, the door burst open. I tumbled through, tumbling into a vast glowing chamber, leaving behind the darkness and the howling shadows. As I lay on the ground, breathing hard, I looked back at the doorway. It stood ominously, the shadows still writhing just beyond. But I was free, for now. I got to my feet and scanned the chamber, my heart racing. What awaited me in this new space, and was it truly safe? Just then, a sound echoed from somewhere deep within the chamber, a low, sinister laugh that chilled me to the bone. I wasn't done facing the darkness yet. My heart pounded in my chest as I rose to my feet, the eerie stillness of the chamber pressing against me like a weight. I scanned the room, half expecting the shadows to follow. Instead, I saw walls lined with ancient stone, illuminated by a soft, pulsing glow that seeped from the cracks around me. It felt like a heart beating, a steady rhythm, both haunting and mesmerizing. "What is this place?" I muttered under my breath, a mixture of dread and curiosity swirling within me. The oppressive silence hung like a thick curtain, yet somewhere deeper inside the chamber I heard whispers again, urgent and insistent, but they were no longer malevolent. The air felt charged, like electricity coursing through the space. As I stepped forward, the whispers coalesced, forming into distinct voices. "You're here! You made it!" they echoed, coaxing me to move deeper into the chamber. I hesitated only a moment, then let instinct guide me. The glowing stone in my hand felt reassuring, a warm pulse that urged me on. With every step, the laughter from earlier echoed in my mind, unsettling and twisted. "What do you want from me?" I called out into the depths.
The laughter faded momentarily, replaced by a heavy silence thick enough to suffocate. "Help us," a voice implored, softer now. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the changing light. My heart twisted painfully. Suddenly, I realized the glimmer around me was fading. It was shifting to a growing darkness just beyond my sight. "Who are you?" I demanded, determination battling my fear. "Those who fell, lost in shadows and forgotten by time," the voice resonated within the stone walls, echoing my own thoughts of loneliness.
The girl vanished into the warmth, leaving questions behind. Where did the shadows go? Were they truly gone, or had they been transferred somewhere else? I stepped through the door, ready to confront whatever was waiting next, only to find myself back outside the church on the warm grass of the festival. The sun shone down brightly, and music spilled into the air, but my heart felt heavy yet again. I moved through the crowd, neither tethered by the past nor truly free of it. There was so much left unsolved. Questions danced in the periphery of my thoughts, intertwining with the laughter around me. Did the presence linger still, hiding among the joyful shouts? Was Blackwood truly safe now? I glanced back at the church, an ominous yet curious silhouette against the bright sky. Perhaps I had escaped, but I carried their shadows with me, an echo of mystery that wouldn't easily fade. As I walked away from the festival, I wondered about the girl, about the shadows. I would never forget. And despite the warmth of the sunlight, a chill settled within me, leaving me to question whether I would ever truly be free from the darkness of Blackwood.